bell sound wide resounds throughout 100 million worlds. The Buddha's law is heard and spread all throughout the triple world. The wondrous sounds that everywhere fill the Dharma realm with peace. May those who hear it gain the strength to follow in faith the Buddha's path. 众生传三千劫内，佛法仰望一国中，共振起法界和平，利益报他诺后的。That's what they say. Okay, put that away for now. Okay, on my desktop, you will see a monk wrapped up very warmly because he is standing on Wutaishan, the monastery called Da Shentong Monastery, one of the largest and oldest monasteries on Wutaishan out in Shanxi province. Sacred space since 280. In other words, for 1,800 years, nearly 2,000 years, people have been gathering at Wutaishan and finding the traces of Manjushri Bodhisattva, the Bodhisattva, great wisdom, who keeps showing up. There have been stories collected about the appearances of Manjushri Bodhisattva since the Han Dynasty. That's, for those of us who don't know when the Han Dynasty existed, that's 200 BC, before the Common Era, and all the way to 200 of the Common Era, so 400 years of the Han Dynasty. And Manjushri's been showing up to teach people as the conditions arose. And the Five Peaks, Wutai, is also called cold, clear. These two first characters here inscribed on the wall. Qing Liang, cold and clear. Miao Bao Chu, marvelously tall place, marvelously high, way up high. The altitude of the peaks surrounding Wutaishan are 10,000 feet. Down in the valley where this monastery is located, it's not that tall. But still, it was 0 degrees at night, Celsius, and up to 14 during the day. When the sun came out, a beautiful blue sky, crystal clear weather, unpolluted. So we were taking off layers in the sunshine. But Qingliang Shan, one of the more fascinating things about Qingliang Shan is that in the Avatamsaka Sutra, which most people will tell you is beyond time and space, it's a document from another time and space. In the Avatamsaka Sutra, it says, if you go to the north, you'll find Qingliang Mountain, where Manjushri Bodhisattva teaches. You go, wait a minute. The Avatamsaka Sutra was spoken by the Buddha 2,500 years ago, and it's reporting Manjushri at Wutaishan? Yep, it is. So you go, oh, I don't understand that, but I'm happy to be in the world where these things can coexist. So, yeah, it's very magical space, sacred space. While we were there at Wutaishan, there was a Chan session happening. It was week number 6 of a 7-week Chan Qi, and the monks all came out while we were there going to lunch. And the monk in charge came over and he said, this way for lunch. He said, you're here for lunch, right? I said, no, I wish I were. We're just here touring. We have to get to Beijing tonight. So he said, oh, okay, well, next time. So we investigated the possibility of joining in a Chan session from Wutaishan next time. So one of the interesting things was that, let's see here, if I have the pictures, I could have done this in advance, couldn't I? We've been talking about Manjushri when he showed up. That's, okay, here it is. Dailoding, that was up above. We didn't go to Dailoding. Let's see here. I'm looking for the Great White Pagoda in, let's see, maybe it's here. Yeah, here it is. This was all wrapped up in architecturally green safety cloth because they're refurbishing it. So the Great White Pagoda it looked like a birthday cake or a birthday gift. So we didn't show it in all its glory because it was being processed and refurbished. But it will be back, and when it's back, it's going to be splendid. So this is another view of some of the monasteries at Wutaishan. The place was absolutely jammed with tourists. Oh my goodness. Very popular tourist spot, and operated not by the Buddhist Association, but by the government, because that's where the revenues come in. But the Chinese government has done a really nice job of protecting and so they're trying to do two things, and I will also I'm going to add before we get into the text that on the airplane I watched a documentary called "我爱敦煌," about a young woman who arrived at the Muogao caves in Dunhuang when she was she was 24, and she was she'd been schooled in archaeology and classification of architectures and things, and she was sent out to Dunhuang, which was it's this place in the desert where in Xinjiang, where if you turn your back, the sand covers it over. You can't find it again because the sand dunes shift and the wind blows so hard, the storms. But Dunhuang is on the Silk Route, and I showed pictures and told stories about my visit back in 2019, just before COVID, to Dunhuang. And oh my goodness. So this documentary film was about the woman who gave her entire life to the preservation of the cave paintings at Dunhuang. And she is, if it weren't for her dedication and giving up a chance to be with her two sons and her husband for months on end, Dunhuang wouldn't have survived. And the documentary talks about the challenge between the government, who said, we want people to see these incredible paintings and sculptures in caves. And at this point, when the government decided it was worth opening up as a tourist spot, the scholars and the archivists and the librarians and the archaeologists and the historians said, well, if you do, that's the last generation that will ever see them. Because why? The paintings are oxygen reactive. And if you bring 1,000 people into a cave, the colors will fade and the paintings will just before your eyes disappear, and they're gone, and nobody will see them in the future. So how do they balance showing the treasures of these Buddhist cave paintings while preserving them for the future? And the documentary was all about that tension. And the Chinese government, you have to say, did a really good job. So now we're at Wutaishan, not at Dunhuang, but Wutaishan, for example, one of the biggest problems at a place like this is, what do you do with the sewage? Tourists have to use the bathrooms, and there's no plumbing for this kind of, on a mountaintop like this. So how do they do it? Well, we've discovered clean, sanitary, useful facilities at Wutaishan to deal with the oceans of pilgrims who come out and just tourists are out for fun, So lovely experience. And highly recommended. If people have an opportunity to travel to China, include Wutaishan on that sacred space on your itinerary. So, yeah. Okay, on with the lecture. Here we go. So everywhere I went, I let people know that the sutra lectures, that the Avatamsaka Sutra is being explained in English, Chinese, and Vietnamese. And there's a great story being told right now about Sudana, Shancai Tongzi, and what he saw, and who he met, and what it was like. So I did a lot of advertising for our series here at Gold Coast Dharma Realm. Let's start. We'll repeat this paragraph and get started right here. Okay, oops, here we are. Here we go. I will give you a line and everybody wants to read it after me. Here we go. 我从于彼如来之所 我从于彼如来之所 闻此法门 问此法门 受持读诵 意念观察 假使有人 以大海量墨 须弥巨笔 书写于此 铺言法门 一品中一门 一门中一法 一法中一义 一义中一句 不得少分 不得少分 Sorry, one more time 不得少分 何况能尽 Okay, there we go. Now, we'll do the same. There we go. All right. Let's read it together in unison. Ready? From the abode of that thus come one, I heard that Dharma method. I received, upheld, read, and recited it. I mindfully recalled and pondered it. If someone used as much ink as there is water in the ocean and a stack of pens as tall as Mount Sumeru to write out this universal I Dharma method, he could not express a mere fraction of a single method within a single chapter, or a single Dharma within a single method, or a single meaning within a single Dharma, or a single phrase within a single meaning. How much the less could he thoroughly complete it? Okay. That's it. Now, what's going on is Sudana has come to see a monk whose name is Hai Yun Bichu, Ocean Cloud. And he's at the seaside, and he's gone through his standard protocol that he has to go through before he gets taught, which is he asks for Dharma, he says what he wants. He wants to learn how to practice bodhisattva practices. The teacher, in turn, asks him, have you made the Bodhi resolve? Yes, I have. Okay, here we go. And the teacher starts to explain what he wants to tell him, the preparation. And in this case, Bhikshu Haiyun has quite a story. He says, I've come to the ocean side in 12 years, and I contemplate the ocean, and he runs through all the different things about the ocean that he contemplates. And then he says, one day I was looking at the ocean and this lotus flower came up. And then he describes the lotus flower. Oh my goodness, it is transcendent, incredible. All the devas who come to make offerings to the lotus and all of the spiritual heavyweights, the gods and the dragons in the Eightfold Pantheon show up, and these are not your ordinary spiritual beings. They're often terrifying, and yet there they are. They love this lotus because it's like spectacular, and they're there wondering what's going on. Then, as he looks, a Buddha appears, poof, on top of the lotus, and he describes the Buddha. And the Buddha starts to teach him a method, a practice. a Faman, a Dharma practice. So that's where we are, right at that point. And then the Buddha stretches out his right hand and rubs the crown of the head of the monk and explains the method. And it revealed states, it explained practices, it explained the Dharma. Dharma wheels were involved, Buddha countries got purified, wrong theories fell away, demon armies quit, beings got happy, the workings of their minds were revealed, it understood the faculties that beings have, their skills, their shortcomings, and then it brings them to awakening according to their thoughts. That's where we stopped last week. So let's take a look at what this is. The Buddha, sitting on the lotus, is explaining a sutra. It's a teaching. If people are familiar with the genre of martial arts films, often in wuxia martial arts movies, either the Shaw brothers from Hong Kong or Stephen Chow, Zhou Xingchi. Zhou Xingchi is Stephen Chow kind of spoofs this genre, but it's such a widespread standard trope, you know. It's a theme that happens, which is what? There's a secret book out there. And if you can get the secret book, you get the secrets of martial arts. And you have power and you can defeat everybody else. And you can sometimes become immortal. Sometimes if it's Buddhist inspired, you get enlightened if you get the right book. And so the hero in the movie goes out on a quest for the book. And sometimes the teacher who he finds after much toil hands him the book and then dies. So he transmits the Dharma. Well, where did those ideas come from? They came from this sutra. They came from this you people know the word trope, T-R-O-P-E, this paradigm, this theme is intact right here in the sutra. It's right here with this teacher. It is the teacher's story. He says, the lotus came out of the water, the Buddha came out of the lotus, or landed on top of the lotus, and the Buddha reached out, patted me on the head, and explained this Pu Yan Faman, universal vision, Dharma method. And it's a sutra. And once you read the sutra, what happens to you when you read the sutra is this happens to you. The Buddha states, it tells you what Buddhas are like. It explains what bodhisattvas practice. It talks about the dharmas around bodhisattvas, their compassion, for example. Dharma wheels appear that correspond with your body and your abilities and your new skills. Countries are purified. Things in the world that are wrong and you can't explain just vanish. Like when, I won't do it, I won't mention. But you sure is tempting, right? That, yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to deal with just all of that deviant stuff? Demons' armies lose the war and go away. Just think about Lord of the Rings. Sauron's tower falls. Frodo carries the ring to Mount Doom. He and Sam destroy it. Beings feel happy. And the sutra, look at this one, I like a lot. This is what Master Hua told us. That when we understand the sutra, the way the mind works becomes clear. The sutras are handbooks of the way the mind works when it's working right, not for selfish purposes. It lets you understand how memory works, how dreaming works, how people's minds can change when they're stubbornly holding on an idea and they can let it go. All these things, all the different faculties. And it teaches us ultimately how to wake up to the highest function of our mind, to awakening. Pretty neat. That's what sutras do. That's what sutras can do. And so the Buddha, passing it on to Haiyun Bicho, Haiyun Bicho is now passing it on to Sudana. Oh, okay. Now, what we just read was, he says, from that Buddha, I heard this method. I received it, I upheld it, I read it, I recited it, I remembered it, and I thought it over. That's what he did. The Chinese was hearing this method, I shou, shi, du, song, yi, nian, guan, cha, right? I took it on, I upheld, I carried it, I received it, I accepted it, I didn't fight with it. I read it aloud, I recited it from memory, I thought it over, kept it in mind, and was always looking through its lens at the world. So when you get a sutra, even if you get like a page of it or a passage of it, you can use it very much like a camera lens that gives you a whole new perspective on the world. The world looks different after you receive, uphold, read, recite, recall, and ponder it. Okay. Then our monk says, he's talking to Sudana. These are instructions to Sudana now. He says, suppose somebody, now this is hypothetical. This is a what if. What if somebody used ink, how much? As much as ocean water, and a stack of pens, writing brushes or ballpoint pens or pencils, as tall as Mount Sumeru, and decided you're going to copy the sutra. If you write out the method here, how much would you be able to actually record? He says, check out this Avatamsaka analogy. He says, you couldn't express even a fraction of a method in a chapter, or a single Dharma in that method, or a single meaning in that Dharma, or a single phrase within that meaning. Right? This is kind of a reverse shrinkage. So you could write it out, but just a little bit of what's available. How much less could you ever finally finish it? Okay, why is that? Here's my best answer why that's true. It's because what the sutras are, and this would apply to any sutra you're familiar with. The Lotus Sutra, for example, if you're bowing to the Lotus Sutra one character at a time, if you are copying out a text with a writing brush in Chinese, or if you're typing it on an iPad with an attached keyboard, whatever way you're coming to grips with this text, understand that the sutras are living documents. They come from the nature of a human who's awake. They don't fall down on tablets from the gods, the way some texts famously arrive. They're not dug up out of the earth. They're transmitted from somebody who's awake, which means that the sutras are part of everyone's nature, but because our natures are covered over by whatever amount of attachments and false thinking that we have, that doesn't change the reality that the sutras are internal and they're realized. Sutras arrive through realization of any human who can look at his or her nature. Different people have different sutras. So Medicine Buddha explained the sutra that helps us, what is it? It's Shao Zai Yin Shou, do away with disasters and lengthen our lives. That's the sutra from the nature of Medicine Buddha that he chose to explain. So we have the Medicine Buddha Sutra. Earth-Tor Bodhisattva has a different set of teachings, yet they come from the same place. They're alive, and while they have a beginning, a middle, and an end, you could say that they're endlessly adaptive. They're organic. This is not a book in a library. It doesn't start really, it doesn't end. Particularly the Lotus Sutra, where they say the Buddha is still explaining the Lotus Sutra on Vulture Peak in India, so they say. So that's kind of a reason, you might think, why these the the sutra that the Buddha revealed to Bhikshu Haiyun couldn't be copied out to an end. Let's continue. Keep looking here. Okay. Let's see. Let's just do what's on this page here. And again, I'll give you a line, and please give it back to me. Here we go. Make it bigger. Yep. Sure, there's a way to do this more elegantly than I do. Okay, here we go. Ready? 善男子，我与彼佛所前200岁，受持如是普贤法门，于日日中，以温持陀罗尼光明，领受无数品，以寂静门陀罗尼光明，去入无数品，以无边 I'm sorry, one more time. 以无边旋陀罗尼光明，普入无数品，以随地观察陀罗尼光明，分别无数品，以唯利陀罗尼光明，普摄无数品。再来，以莲花庄严陀罗尼光明，引发无数品。Good, good, good. Okay. Slide this over so we can read it together. Okay, let's try unison. Read it together. Ready? With me. Good man, I have lived at that Buddha's abode for 1,200 years, receiving and upholding this universal I, Dharma method, period. Take a breath. Day after day, through the Dharani light of listening and holding, I receive countless chapters. Through the Dharani light of stillness and tranquility, I comprehend numberless chapters. Through the Dharani light of endless revolutions, I embody countless chapters. Through the Dharani light of contemplation according to the stages, I discriminate countless chapters. Through the Dharani light of awesome power, I gather in countless chapters. Through the Dharani light of lotus flower adornments, I discover countless chapters. Okay. Well, that's obscure, isn't it? So, first of all, he says, okay, what's going on? Sudana is there just dazzled with his palms together like a good student. And Bhikshu Haiyun is sitting on his Dharma seat teaching him. So this is a teaching situation. We've got student and a teacher. There's a relationship here. And Haiyun Bicho is in the middle of passing on what Sudana came to learn. So we're right at that point. Now this situation gets repeated 53 times, where Sudana shows up, asks for Dharma, the teacher goes through the inspection, he asks if he's qualified, and then once he learns that Sudana is ready to be a Dharma vessel, he brings it out. He just tells the story. And it's an amazing relationship that the Avatamsaka Sutra is laying out for us. This is teacher to student. And then the student does what he can with what he's learned. He has to cultivate it. And that's one of the things that is interesting about explaining this chapter 39, because there are clues kind of at the side of the text about Sudana's cultivation. You could just say, well, he gets 53 teachers like bathing him in Dharma. How much does he remember from the previous one when he's receiving the new instructions? Well, the sutra explains that. They say he travels 12 years between certain teachers. Other times he has to go to sea to find the ship's captain, Vaira. And then he has to go through people's disrespecting him when he's looking for the courtesan. I forgot her name. We'll get there. Then he has to go look for Guan Yin, and he can't find her at first. So there's time is passing in between instructions and the next set of instructions. So during that time, Sudana is reviewing, practicing, trying out, adjusting, embodying what he's learned from the previous teacher. So in this way, the story comes alive. We get the actual telling of the Avatamsaka stories, collection of stories, and the traveling of this pilgrim. It's funny, yesterday during the Master M.T. Cloud biography lecture preparation, I came to this realization, which somebody standing beside would go, well, duh, it's so obvious. How come you didn't understand this? That without intention, I have made it my business to tell the stories of Buddhist travelers. Don't know why. I didn't set out. That truly was not a conscious decision. But look at Sudana. He is a Buddhist pilgrim. He's a pilgrim. And we had a dialogue about how do you translate the word pilgrim into Chinese. And it's not, so pilgrim itself, as an English word, doesn't have a direct correlate in simple, there's no simple word in Chinese that covers it. The word that we came up with was chao sheng. Chao sheng means to bow to pay homage to sages. And what's different, chao sheng, and then we said, chao sheng zhi lu, travel in order to pay your respects to wise men and women, sages who have accomplished spiritual journey. Sort of, chao sheng zhi lu. But a pilgrim, the thing that's different about the word pilgrim in English, to my mind, is that there's travel involved, but the actual journey is internal. It's an inner journey. Now, people do cover distance. For example, one of the most famous pilgrimages in Europe is San Juan de Compostela in Spain. And it's a fabled journey that you make from church to mission to sacred site to historic village where a saint lived, etc. And you do cover ground. The San Juan, I know Tom O'Rourke, our buddy, has done this multiple times, and it's you go through shoes. You wear out your shoes on the road, and you're at the mercy of the weather. And people who do, to this day, who take the San Juan, the Compostela pilgrimage, they talk about the conversations they have in the hostels overnight in some small town along the road. And so there's movies made about fathers and sons who take the pilgrimage, only the father died. So the son, in seeking the last memories of his dad, follows his father's footsteps on the pilgrimage. Things like that. And there are illnesses that are healed during the pilgrimage, and there are just life changes that happen on the road. And you can do a portion of it, or you can do the whole thing. Some people vow to do an eternal pilgrimage. They're never not on the trail. They finish it and they start over, sort of thing. In Japan, there are famous pilgrimage tours from monastery to monastery, from Shinto site to Shinto site, from historic mountaintops to historic vistas. And it's the same situation, that people are drawn to the physical path because of what it does to their internal awakening. So somehow pilgrimage captures all of that. It's a movement through space in order to cover in ground in the mind and to make connections. So you have to physically walk, but the journey is an interior journey. And we were looking for a Chinese word that actually captures that. Having heard all that, translator, what do you think? Do you have a new one? What do we say? 朝圣之旅. 差不多了. Okay, that's the translation. Okay. So, Sudana is a pilgrim, and I'm telling his story. But without realizing it, when we finished the previous, what we used to lecture on, the Devasha Sutra, I forget. We said, what's next? What shall we pick to explain? And somebody said, oh, please explain the Shurangama Sutra. And I thought, ooh, that would take a lot more time, because we do it 1 hour per week, and it would take forever to get through the Shurangama. We need something a little bit less intense. So the suggestion came, Master Hua's picture biography of Empty Cloud. Perfect. Okay, so we picked it up. Without thinking, you know what the story is about, 30 of the 200 episodes, 36 of them have to do with 3 steps on Tao. His journey from Putoshan to Wutaishan. And that's a journey, isn't it? Yes, it is. So, okay, there's the second famous Buddhist traveler. And then, tomorrow night at 7:30 California time, 1:30 Australian time, I explain the 10 transferences chapter, and every week I leave 20 minutes to tell the story of Master Xuanzang. And if you had to name one famous real-life Buddhist pilgrim, it would be Master Xuanzang. Although there are 3 extant pilgrims' stories, Master Fa Xian, Master I Jing, and Master Xuanzang, who we remember the 3 of them. Why? Because they made it. There were hundreds who set out, who left their bones behind on the Taklamakan Desert, or got blown off a mountain peak in the Himalayan snows. So, but we do have 3 famous Tang Dynasty pilgrims. The most famous is Master Xuanzang. And so I tell his story every Sunday night, California time, Monday noon, Australian time. Somehow, I managed to come up with 3 Buddhist pilgrims, 3 bhikshus, whose story I tell. Well, Sudana is not. He's a layman. He's not a bhikshu. But how amazing that just kind of happened without thinking about it. Okay, so here is Haiyun Bicho. He says, he's in mid-instruction. I've lived at the Buddhist place for 1,200 years here in the Oceanside, and I've got my method. Here's what I practice. The universal vision, universal vision, Puyan Pama. And he says, day after day, I receive chapters, comprehend chapters, embody chapters, discriminate chapters, gather in and discover countless chapters. He says. So talk about a living method. He's been doing it for 1,200 years, and it's brand new every day. He never runs out of it. It's because it's this organic, living principle document that is never old. He never has to repeat it. It's just always refreshing itself. So how cool is that? Like a fountain of Dharma. And now, there's a term here that's repeated, through the Dharani light of something or other. the Dharani light of listening and holding, stillness and tranquility, endless revolutions, contemplation according to the 10 stages, awesome power, lotus flower adornments, Dharani light. So, full stop. What's a Dharani light? What in the world could this be? Okay, good question. I went to our never-failing source, Master Chengguan, who, by the way, wrote his commentary here, right there on my desktop, more or less, there at Wutaishan Daxian Tongsi. He spoke about Toloni Guang Ming. What is it? He said, go to the 9th stage. He said, for reference, if he had, what was it called back in, hyperlinks. If he had hyperlinks back when the internet was brand new, I remember thinking how cool it was that you could write code that when you click on this word, it takes you to another place. I was like, whoa, look what computers can do. Hyperlinks. That was before HTML code even existed. That was before WYSIWYG. Remember WYSIWYG? What you see is what you get. These are all the early protocols of the internet. So what Master Chengguan would do if he had hyperlinks, he would go, click on this if you want to know about Tolo Ni Guangming, Dharani light. And he pointed us to the 9th stage. He also could point us to the 9th practice. That's where, and I remember talking about this just two lectures ago, that's where the practice of Dharani appears. It has to do with speech, and it has to do with vibration, sound. And let's look at the 9th practice. That's where the Bodhisattva gets functioning of Dharani, starts to work for him. And it's, again, inherent in you, in me. It's latent. It's right there. It's coded in, but we have to cultivate according to it to get there. But when we do, out of our nature is this incredible potential to answer questions and resolve doubts. That's what it's about. So it's a teaching. The Shurangama, people are familiar with Guanyin Bodhisattva's ability to turn the ear organ around. Fan Wan Wan Zixing. This is a method of Chan meditation. Guanyin Bodhisattva is reversing the ear organ to achieve perfect understanding. Well, in that section, the Buddha says, 此兔真教体清净撒因文. Here in this place where we are, if you want to get to how teaching happens, it's in sound. The substance of teaching happens in sound here. So, yeah, in other words, not light, not symbol, but instead through the ear, through sound. All right? That's how we learn things. Good. There's also visual, but the Buddha's teaching through sound here. Dharani is this ability in the human mind to hear what's coming at you and get to the essence of it and make a single sound that responds and replies and makes perfect all of the imperfect questions. You remember? People recall how this works? So I'm not going to dig it out. I'll just do it from my memory. But it says the Bodhisattva on this stage, the 9th practice or the 9th stage, Di Jiu Heng, Di Jiu Di, same, uses Dharani to come in front of living beings, countless numbers of living beings, each of whom direct questions at the Bodhisattva, doubts, typically difficult questions, difficult things to answer. And there are infinite numbers of them. The Bodhisattva, in a single, it says, Yinian Xin, in a single thought, can receive all of those questions and then utter a single sound, ah, and that sound goes out to each of the questioners, resolves their doubts and makes them happy and delights them. That's the power of Dharani. Dharani, the Sanskrit name. 总持 in Chinese, something that gathers in and sustains. It's also another word for mantra. So, how about that? How do what do you do with that story? First of all, I really love it. Being somebody who's worked with languages, all my education had to do with language, not with quantities, not with math or science, but with what came in through the ear. So we have in our minds this incredible ability with sound and vibration. So that's what Haiyun Bicho is telling us here. He says, what he was doing here with the Buddha by the seaside was receiving and upholding this universal I Dharma method, and as he recited it, somehow, through the Dharani light of listening and holding, he said, 以闻持陀罗尼光明. So, in other words, something about this method involves a mantra, a toloni, and when you recite it, there is light that occurs. All right? That like, anybody make sense of that? So let's start. What else do we know about this? Well, the Shurangama mantra, 而是世宗从柔记中明白把光中涌出千叶宝莲有花流. The Shurangama mantra talks about when you start to recite it, when the Buddha started to recite the Shurangama mantra, this light came out from the crown of his head. And the light just did wonderful things. And the mantra was there with the light. So, light and sound, vibration and understanding, these are all tied in somehow miraculously to the Buddha Dharma. And here is Sudana's teacher number 3, if we start with Manjushri, saying, right, there is a dharani called one shi, hearing and upholding, that when you recite it, a light comes out, and it helps you ling shou wu shu ping. It helps you accept and hold on to countless numbers of chapters of your sutra. I receive countless chapters through that dharani, day after day. Okay? There it is. That's what Sudana's hearing. Sudana's like, whoa. I guess there's a lot to learn, huh? Yeah, countless chapters. Numberless chapters, countless chapters, countless chapters, countless chapters. The dharani light of stillness and tranquility, that one has to do with meditation. The dharani light of endless revolutions, that has to do with a quality of these teachings that is movement. Notice it's not stillness and tranquility at all, it's constantly turning. And Dharma wheel is very much a thing here. So he embodies, he's able to take the principles in the sutra and put them into practice. Okay, this is contemplating through the stages, the Bodhisattva's path. He's able to identify, oh yeah, that has to do with happiness. Oh, that has to do with purity. Oh, that has to do with light. Oh, that has to do with vigor, right? So, the dharani light of strength, countless chapters come to him. The dharani light of, check this out, lotus adornments. There you go. I discover countless chapters. This is profound Buddha Dharma. And for people who say, well, I just came to meditate. I didn't know I was going to get into all this stuff. Yep, take a look. This is the real Buddha Dharma. This is not elementary making your mind peaceful, although it will do that. This is real Avatamsaka Buddha Dharma. And to my mind, I mean, what did you come for? This is just incredible. Let's do the next 4, okay? Let's check the next 4 out, because we only did 6 and they're 10. Ready? I'll give you a line, you give it back. 以清净言音陀罗尼光明开眼无数品，以虚空藏陀罗尼光明显示无数品，以光具陀罗尼光明增广无数品，以海藏陀罗尼光明遍悉无数品。Okay, there we go. Moving it over here. Okay, let's read it together. Ready? Through the Dharani light of the sounds of pure words, I explain countless chapters. Through the Dharani light of the treasury of space, I manifest countless chapters. Through the Dharani light of accumulated radiance, I increase and expand countless chapters. Through the Dharani light of the treasury of oceans, I explain and analyze countless chapters. Okay. So, looking at the verbs here, explaining, manifesting, increasing, expanding, explaining and analyzing. In other words, the monk's intellect is moving. The left brain is really busy here. People get attached to the idea that, for example, they hear that Zen patriarchs at one point tossed the sutras into the fire and Buddha images, and they killed the Buddha. So they get attached to the idea that you can't read. Reading is bad. You need to do wordless Dharma. Well, sometimes, definitely, because we've had, contemplation, stillness and tranquility, listening and upholding. But there are other times when you need to be on it with clarity in grammar. You need to get all the punctuation right. You need to translate it correctly. Because the people are not simply wordless beings. We are a blend of analysis and also beauty. So you can appreciate form and shape and color and movement, but you can also definitely appreciate clarity of definition. So both sides of the mind, left and right brain, are working here. So what kind of Dharani light? Pure words, the sounds of pure words. They help you explain countless chapters. The Dharani light of the treasury of space. Okay, here we had the treasury of oceans down below. Countless chapters appear. Dharani light of accumulated light. You increase and expand countless chapters. The Dharani light of treasury of oceans help you analyze countless chapters. Oh yeah, this is pretty special stuff. Sudana is getting his money's worth, I would say, right? Now, something that occurred to me as I was thinking this through is the we're getting, the analogy that we just had about Haiyun saying, suppose you wanted to copy it out, and you had so much ink and so many pens, and you had lots of time, and you were very busy with your brush or your keyboard, you still wouldn't be able to capture the tiniest fragment of what's available, because this is a living document. It's infinitely large. Now, that analogy that's an Avatamsaka way of talking about stuff. It's like, whoa, it's just infinitely huge. To give our limited minds a picture of what's involved here. The Dharma texts are organic. It's not just a book. And yet, books carry it. But suppose we wanted to express it for young people today. I read an article in the Times the other day about what has happened to books. And it was written by school administrators who are getting reports from classroom teachers worldwide that books are no longer the preferred medium for instruction. I remember when I was in high school, we got the reading list at the beginning of the semester or the quarter, and there would be a dozen books on it that we were expected to contain, to control, to have. We had to read them, and we were responsible for what they contained. For example, a class in American literature often had Moby Dick, Charles Melville's book about the great white whale and Captain Ahab. Moby Dick is a thick volume, there's hundreds of pages. And in the article that I was reading, they were saying nobody teaches Moby Dick anymore. It's a book, it's too long. Students won't read it. They protest that we don't read anymore. So what you get instead is maybe a video about Moby Dick. And it has to have a celebrity playing Captain Ahab. Johnny Depp has to play Captain Ahab or something before the students will absorb any piece of it. But the idea of, over the weekend, we're going to read chapters 1 through 7 of a text doesn't happen anymore. That printed books, the way my baby boomer generation understood them, is a thing of the past. And that's interesting. Now the TikTok 45-second videos are the preferred medium for carrying images, mostly. So different than in our lifetime that this change has happened. So the point is, the reason why I'm bringing this up is Haiyun Bicho is saying the books that the Buddha is teaching me with countless chapters are maybe we need to find a new way to explain for a time when we are post-printed book now. And yet, take a look here. This is a Dharma transmission. It's a teaching that Sudana is getting. Imagine that we're the student. We have a relationship with the teacher. We have announced that we want to know what he or she knows, and then we make ourselves available and sit and listen to Janjiaoti, the true substance of the teaching, the body of the teaching, which comes through sound. We have to understand the language, and oh my goodness, what if Master, you had an extended weekend with Master Empty Cloud, and you didn't understand his Hunan accent? I had that sad experience with a teacher who came from Gansu, and it was my job to help translate his words for interfaith friends in the U.S., and he explained what he wanted to say, and I didn't get a word of it. And he looked at me and expected me to translate, and I was like, David Chief Foster, what ting budong? Like, I can't understand what you're saying. It's like, oh. So it broke down because of a regional accent. So you got the teacher, you understand what he says, and he is going to show you a method. Faman, a Dharma door. That's our Chinglish translation. What's a Dharma door? A door into the Dharma? A gateway into the Dharma? No, it means a method of practice. Now, check it out. What is a method of practice? Well, it's a technology, a technique that exists in you, but you don't know how to bring it out and how to use it. So the teacher says, okay, this comes first. You repeat it numerous times. You have to do these things to get it, maybe like cooking. Cooking. Or riding a bike, or swimming, or walking a tightrope that's, 2 feet off the ground, not something you're going to break your leg. It's like sitting still, or which hand goes on top, which hand is on the bottom. How much do you heat the mixture in the bowl? How long do you have to whip it before it's ready? Like reading the physical responses to the application of this practice and knowing when to stop, reading the signs. All of these things are what? This is what's involved in learning a Dharma. The thing that is going to practice is my body, and my body is this collection of organic things, from amoebas to heart, liver, lungs, kidney, gallbladder, spleen. If I get tired, if I overheat, if I have to stand up midway and go relieve nature, what do you do in those circumstances? How do you read the signs that your body is giving you as you learn this method? That's all involved in the teaching. Sudana is actually absorbing instruction and learning how to make it work for him. And the teacher is determined to pass it on. He really wants Sudana to get it right. So this is all part of the experience of learning a method. And we're in the midst of these teachers giving Sudana this instruction. So he'll learn it in the time he has. Now, we've only seen, after Manjushri, one teacher so far. This is number 3. And we haven't gotten to the humility part, which is part of 53 different teachers' instructions. Samantabhadra not so much, because he's the last one. But each of them, after they do their best to pass on the Dharma instruction to Sudana, say to him, now that's all I know. If you really want to get an answer to your question, go south, because there's another one. There's another teacher down there who's going to give you the real thing. How could I know what they teach? I'm limited, right? So that's very interesting how each of the teachers makes what humbles themselves in the face of more knowledge. So that's coming up. That's coming up next week. So what else is involved here, and I think it's worth saying, is so far the 3 was Manjushri a bhikshu? It's not clear. Manjushri appears when we see him. He is there, or is that Samantabhadra? This is Manjushri's there. So he appears very beautifully adorned. Is he a bhikshu? It's not for sure. Bhikshu, cloud of virtue, is a bhikshu. Bhikshu, cloud of ocean cloud, is a bhikshu. And the Shanju bhikshu, the next one, 3 monks in a row. 3 bhikshus in a row show up. And after we get used to learning from bhikshus, the scene changes, and we start learning from women, bhikshunis, we start learning from lay women, we learn from the Buddha's mother, we learn from a courtesan, we learn from 12 spirits of the night, spirits that rule the night, and all different kinds. We learn from Brahmins and yogis and bodhisattvas. Guan Yin shows up. We learn from young men and women who are the teachers in one case. So it's interesting that the first 3 are all Bicho, and what that involves is, what's our relationship to monks? What's the deal with red envelopes? red packets, hongbao. What is that about? Where I was just in China, and people are very used to the idea that one thing you do is you put red $100 bills with the face of Mao Zedong on the corner, and you hand it to a monk and bow to him. That's a very appropriate thing for Buddhist lay people to do. It's like, well, why are you giving me money? That's a question I kind of don't ask, but it occurs to me. What's the purpose? And one very simple answer is, it's a bribe so that the monk doesn't hurt them. You pay him so he won't hex you. He won't use a mantra to, it's like, here, stay away, please. Take some money and think kindly of me, because I know you have mantra power and you can zap me. Now, is that true? That's an exaggeration, isn't it? But if you look, what are the common perceptions of bhikshus? You remember we talked about martial arts films, where there's a magic book that is the source of the quest of the hero of the story. Well, there's also another trope, another convention in martial arts films about the bad monk. You always can tell a bad monk because he's got these huge eyebrows, and he's got beads around his neck that are so big they could choke a horse, the huge beads, and he goes, Amitofo. That's the thing he says. And usually by the third act, he's dead. He's come into conflict with the hero, and of course his martial arts are no match for the hero. But in the process of establishing his character as a bad monk, he goes like this. He goes, and there's light between his palms, and he goes like that. And he zaps people with the light of his dharani. And then he's corrupt. So that's a popular distortion, stereotype of monks. And if you have never actually dealt with or received teachings from a Buddhist monk, then it might be good to give him some money so he leaves you alone in case he's one of those bad ones, right? You never know. So pay him. Is that why red envelopes, hongbao, came into being? I'm not too clear on that. But it's interesting that people have these stereotypes of monks. So, and I will say that this is done out of the corners, because why? The government does not encourage people to hand money to monks. It's not an official sanctioned action, and yet it's very much something that does happen. So what is the relationship between teacher and student? This is what we're exploring, and it's deeply embedded in the pilgrimage of Sudana, is that he's going to look for teachers who will teach him techniques. And he's got to get that technique. How many times do you recite? Do you have to hold your hands in a special way? What happens if I fall asleep? What comes first, what comes next, what comes at the end? What do? I transfer merit at the end, right? All of these questions are part of the techniques that Sudana is learning. And as we study the sutra, I want folks to pay attention to the directions that occur in the side of the Dharma teaching itself. So, for example, Sudana has to, before he leaves them, before he gets instructions to go south, to leave this teacher, and often he cries, he doesn't want to go. And it says he circles the teacher countless times, bows to him, often sheds tears, and then leaves. So there are these subtle storylines embedded in our pilgrimage. So I have a story about technique, and this, let's see here, got 10 minutes. So at one point, after I finished my pilgrimage and arrived at City of 10,000 Buddhas, my job was to take care of the apple trees. And City of 10,000 Buddhas, the former Mendocino State Hospital, was awarded a nationwide award for the best grounds, the best plantings and grounds, because Luther Burbank, the world-famous horticulturalist, was given the job by the state of California to design the grounds, the trees, the grass, the flowers, at Mendocino State Hospital back in the 30s. So Luther Burbank did so, and in the process, many, 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 many fruit trees were planted. We had 50 varieties of apples, not 50 apple trees, 50 varieties, different kinds of apples that were growing there, as well as plums and peaches and pears and things, cherries. But my job at one point was to take care of the apple trees. And so I got into it, and the famous American company where you could buy your supplies was Rodale, R-O-D-A-L-E. Rodale was the name of the company. They put out a catalog, and you could get the right kind of snippers, the right kind of clippers, the right kind of green tape if you wanted to graft. People know the word graft. So grafting happens when you have an apple tree that may be native to the soil in your county, in your valley, in your hillside. And if it's native there, that means pretty much it's bug resistant. The insects won't chew it because it's survived there. They leave it alone. And it's maybe drought resistant. So it suits the wind and the water, the feng shui of the area. But maybe the fruit isn't so good. Maybe it's not sweet. So what you do is you take what's called a scion wood, which is a little piece of wood that's got at least 2 buds from a tree that has really sweet apples, but maybe comes from overseas, so it's not disease resistant. So what you do is you take your grafting knife and you cut a slit in the trunk of the tree that's already there, and you angle it just right with your knife and put in the scion wood from the sweet apple tree, and then you wrap it with the green tape and you water it just right. And next season, you have a hybrid apple tree, which is both disease resistant, drought resistant, and is sweet. It's a new apple comes out. So that was my job, was to do the grafting of new trees and keep the old ones going. So I was successful about 1 out of 4 times, 25% successful. 3 out of 4 failed, didn't take. And I couldn't figure out why. It was my technique was wrong or something. So now, Shifu had a secretary, Mr. Zhou Guoli, Zhou Jushi. Zhou Guoli came from Manchuria, as did Shifu. And when he first arrived, I was at Gold Mountain Monastery. I was a new monk. And I drove out to the San Francisco International Airport, and here was Mr. Zhou. So I got to greet him, take his baggage, get him in the car, drive him back to Gold Mountain, where he bowed to Shifu and started his work editing Shifu's letters and writing and commentaries. So one day, City of 10,000 Buddhas, feeling pretty discouraged about my lack of success in grafting fruit trees, and Mr. Zhou walks by. He says, 你做什么呢？弘誓法师. I said, 我截枝了，我截枝苹果. I'm grafting apple trees. He said, oh. He looked up at the sky, he looked at his watch, and he said, today? I said, yeah. He said, no, you won't succeed. Why? He says, well, it's the wrong time of the month. And I'm like, do you know about grafting fruit tree? He says, yeah, I grew up on an apple farm. My family are apple orchardists in Manchuria, where many, many, many of the fruits that the world enjoys began. Northeast China is famous for cold weather fruits, stone fruits, apples and pears and plums and peaches and cherries. So he said, no, I'll tell you what, he says, I won't try to explain it. Just, I'll meet you here in 2 weeks when the moon is full. All right? I said, moon? Okay. So I looked at, okay. So 2 weeks later, I'm there outside with my green tape and my special grafting shears and water and my book reading, and I'm my fancy tools. And here comes Mr. Joe. And Choglali goes up, he says, oh, good, I'm glad you're here. And he says, give me your scion wood, give me your new branch. So I had a little slip with 2 buds from the fancy sweet apple tree. And he says, here, he takes it. He looks on the ground, he reaches down, grabs a handful of dirt, spits in it, mixes it up, puts the wood in the slot on the tree, slaps the mud on it, and says, there you go, that's all. And I'm like, but you didn't use the tape and the fancy? He says, no, it's the moon. He walked away, Came back 3 weeks later, it took. It was healthy and growing right there in the, So the Dharma method, the technique of how you do it, what actions do you take, what actions do you not take, and when do you do it, the timing, that's all involved in what the teacher is passing on to the student. And in Mr. Joe's case, he had probably grafted a couple thousand apple trees in his lifetime. He knew the right time. All I had to do was grab some dirt, spit in it, slap it on, done. Sure enough, it worked. And those apples that came out of that tree were pretty good. So learning the technique and how to do it is the skill of the teacher and the student. And the Dharma method, the technique. So that's what we're learning. And the Avatamsaka it's a handbook. It is a rumen, it's a primer for how to cultivate the Bodhisattva path. And if we understand it and put it into practice, by golly, out of our nature, when the time is right, will come the seeds of Bodhi and the fruit of Bodhi. So. All right, now I'm going to, let's see here, what else do I have? This is just one picture here. This is not Wutaishan, this is Tiantaishan. Tiantaishan is in Zhejiang province. Wutaishan is in Shanxi province. This rock in the middle, that is reputedly to be where Master Zhizhe, the wise one, Zhiyi Fashi, sat. And when he explained the Tiantai Jiaoguan, the contemplation of the Tiantai school, which is when Buddhism in China stood up on its own, no longer looking back at India as the source of proper Dharma. So this was before the Tang. This was the 6th century, so the 500s, where Master Zhizhe, and his primary methods included Chan meditation and repentance. So he would, by Chan, he would bow repentances, Fang Guang Chan, and then he would meditate. And the Moha Zhiguan, the great calming and contemplating text, is where a lot of this Dharma is passed on. So we've made friends with the monks at Guoqingsi in the Tiantaishan, and they took us around to Xiu Chan Si, cultivating dhyana monastery, which is where Master Zhizhe lived. And they're rebuilding it there. The monks are doing it by hand, and they're doing it old-fashioned way with no nails, no metal. They're using natural joins to build a monastery, and they're using teak, camphor, and cedar, so it's extremely fragrant there. Quite wonderful. So, alrighty, it is time to dedicate merit here, and look forward to being with you again next week for more. I have more photos developed at that point and edited, so we can share Wutaishan, Tiantaishan, and Zhenru Chansi on Yunjushan, where Master Empty Cloud ended his 120 years of cultivation. So. If you have not registered to vote wherever you are in North America, please do. Last chance. This election needs you. Needs your vote. Here we go. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. And then we will conclude by bowing to the Buddhas. Please join. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Here we go. Okay, that's all for us for this week. See you all next week. Amitofo. Bye now.
Recording stop.